Hey guys, in this video we continue our coverage of the move knight to d4 in reply to the Spanish four knights to bishop to b5. The good news is the hard work really is already done. Bishop c4 and to a lesser extent bishop a4 are the most critical moves. So in this video it's more of a wrap-up situation where we look at the alternatives. Those include knight takes d4, knight takes e5, and short castles. Those are the three prominent ones. The other ones, like other bishop moves, bishop d3 or bishop e2. We don't have to take all that seriously. And let's start with a move that maybe could be a reason for you not to play knight to d4. Not because it's very scary, but because the position gets too simplified. White can take, and after e takes d4, pushes e-pawn. Play e4 to e5, and there is no proper way for black to avoid serious simplifications here. You go d takes c3, white goes e takes f6, and unfortunately black has nothing better than queen takes f6 here. C takes d2 is just too risky. After bishop d2, queen f6, short castles, followed by a check. White is just too active, so we can't really get away with that. I said the move is queen takes f6. White typically plays d takes c3 here, freeing his bishop and keeping his options open in regards to giving a check next move, trying to simplify the position further, or just castling king7. Black has a bunch of options here. Queen e5 has been popular over the years. But first of all, white can then just play bishop e2. And secondly, I don't really see a reason why we should help white in his task to simplify the game as possible. So my recommendation, as much as possible, is the move bishop to c5, threatening checkmate. Now white has a choice. The most common move here is short castles, after which we have to sacrifice a pawn. But the good news is, it's not a pawn white will greatly enjoy. We have to play short castles so we don't get checked by a rook on e1. And here, if white wants to be consistent, he should take the pawn on d7. Note that if white plays slowly here, it's not improbable to drift into a bad position, for example. I've had quite a few blitz games where people play something like queen h5, you defend the bishop. Now they like to threaten checkmate, they go bishop d3, you go h6, you don't want to weaken the darks with g6, then next you go bishop d7, rook a to e8, and the white position can get very unpleasant very quickly here. Bishop d2, bishop d7. It's not at all easy to play. So there is some hope for black if white plays too slowly. And therefore, the move we should probably look at here is bishop takes d7. Back in the day, people used to play rook d8 here. Then queen h5 was the point, attacking this guy, rook d7, queen takes c5. And black probably makes a draw. But white is a pawn up. If anybody's better, it's white. So it's not a position we want to or need to go to. Instead, modern computer technology fairly quickly points out that we can take, after queen takes d7, we just play an active move, rook a to e8. And black has absolutely full compensation for the sacrificed pawn. One important little detail is that we're threatening checkmate in two moves here. For example, queen c7, queen takes f2. Rook f2, rook e1, checkmate, is a trick well worth remembering because this theme pops up quite often in all kinds of e4, e5 openings. Now, of course, queen c7 is a bit too helpful, but white is not better here. One line I like, for example, is queen d3. This is a sensible move, keeping an eye on the f1 square. Rook to e5, just preparing to maybe double rooks, maybe put some pressure here. And the line I was checking here is pawn to b4, bishop to b6, not forced, but decent, pawn to a4, and the very surprising but very strong move, h5, almost alpha zero style, just pushing the h-pawn up the board. It turns out that after a5, rook d8, black point, so after queen g3, keeping this pawn, h4, almost wins for black, because once again, the good old trick leading to checkmate. Not really forced, but just to show you the options that are dormant here in the black position. White can bail out, it should be noted, by playing something like this. And he should not lose. He's also obviously not better, but he has decent chances to hold the draw. So I think all these lines are not really a reason not to go for knight d4. There's enough winning chances in play left there. One line that is somewhat annoying, I have to admit, is queen e2 check. Once again, not in a sense that black is in any trouble after queen e6. Black is obviously very fine, but there is not that much material left on the board in positions like this after castles, castles, queen e6, and f takes e6. I would still think we have enough to work with here to beat a weaker opponent. White has these double pawns. Pawn structure is not completely symmetrical. So there is some hope. Black wants to probably go d6, e5, put this bishop somewhere, and then have a look around. But if you feel like, ugh, he's going to exchange too many pieces, I don't want that today, then I would not blame you for looking into bishop d6's direction for your game. Still, knight d4 is what I consider the equalizer and is the move I recommend. Knight takes d4 should really not scare us. Ed e5, I've shown you what to do. One other line that you should know is the move knight to d5 here. Not very common, but sometimes played by strong players. I think I've seen maybe Knightage played once. So knight takes d5, e takes d5. Theoretically, I believe all you have to know here, and I'm not even sure you have to know that, but that you could know, is that it's good to give a check here. Looks a bit clumsy, but the point is, if bishop to e2, black is very strong. Pawn to d3. After c takes d3, the pawn structure on the d file has changed. It's no longer 2 black pawns and 2 white pawns, but now it's 1 black pawn and 3 white pawns. But that change actually favors black. And after queen f6, followed by developing, black is clearly the more comfortable side because of the structure. So bishop e2 is bad, queen e2 is better. But this is also not a very challenging line. Black goes b6, followed by bishop b7. Targets this pawn and has 0 problems. My computer gives some line like b3. Pawn to d3. Once again, this theme. C takes d. We don't really mind. And bishop takes d3. Bishop takes d5. It's also absolutely no problem for black. So if anybody's slightly more comfortable, it's black. Even though, not gonna lie, all these positions are very equal. So, knight d5, very dull too, but 0 challenge. One move that you probably won't come across very often, but you can hope that you come across it, is instead of knight takes d4, the move knight takes e5, grabbing the pawn. This used to be more popular, at least as a surprise weapon. When computers were a little weaker, there was quite a body of theory around this, but nowadays we just know it doesn't really work. And I don't expect this line to make a comeback. It's important for black not to take here immediately. I think Lamy once mixed up the move order playing this move instead of queen to e7. But after queen e7, hitting the knight and preparing knight takes b5, followed by d6 if needed. It's white who has to be concerned about equality. One line is knight to f3, now you take on b5 and give a check. Queen e2 takes, king takes, and here, well, this is not hard to find, but you might as well know it. You can go knight d5, covering c7 if this knight gets pushed around with c4. Black plays a6, little counterattack, and black is better because of his 2 bishops and somewhat sounder structure. So knight f3, not very challenging. What people normally do once they made it here is to play the move f4. And after knight takes b5, we see the very efficient d6 covering the c7 pawn and chasing the e5 knight away. Knight f3 is the only sensible move. And here there used to be a body of theory around stuff like c6, knight c3, knight takes e4, short castles, which is indeed not very clear and might even give white some chances to push. But it doesn't take my computer, or probably your computer, long to point out that queen takes e4 is the way that black should play here, and that white is in trouble. Queen e2 is not very thrilling, takes, and once again knight d5 is good here, king d7 is also strong. And black is just better. So what white does here is to play king to f2, threatening rook to e1. Hoping that these combined threats will cause black great discomfort. they cause some discomfort. But it turns out that the big factor in this position is the white king. And after knight g4 check, the white position just isn't playable. Probably the best move is king to g1, but then the rook no longer comes to e1. After king g1, queen to c6. Black is obviously very, very comfortable. So that's not a challenge. And king to g3 is the move you could expect if you get this position. Once again, threatening rook e1, knight c7. But queen to g6 puts the ball very firmly back into white's court. Nothing works for white. For example, knight c7, king d8, knight a8. This knight jumps, picks up the queen. That's not great. If knight to h4, then queen f6 is important to keep in mind. Tending to go g5, break up this little construction. And knight c7, king d8 once again doesn't work. Knight a8, g5. Will be checkmate soon. Trust me. The best line white has at his disposal here is to play h3 here, trying to chase this knight away. Of course, you've guessed the next move. Black once again counters by playing g5. And now white goes queen e2 check. This line is somewhat tricky, because if you play the normal looking king to d8, turns out that after f takes g5, white is actually in the driver's seat. Queen e5 check he takes, and white is better. So, instead of king d8, black has to find the best move here. That move is the funny looking knight to e5, with the very decent tactical justification that if this knight is taken, queen f4 check is the last check of the game, because this king does not have a square to go to. Instead, the computer continues with something like knight f3, g, f, king h2, queen e7. But once again, black is better, and it's not a line white should be playing or expect them to be playing in the near future. So knight takes e5. Just doesn't work, not gonna happen. One move that does work, and that might very well happen, is the move short castles here. I have to admit, as a lover of the two bishops, I've never taken this move very seriously, nor studied it very hard over all these years, because I always thought, like, okay, I take, then I go c6, then I go d6, then I go queen c7, then I go bishop e7, then I castle, then I'm fully developed and have the two bishops. So what could be the worst that could happen? And a part of me still feels that way. But I have to admit that practical results in these types of positions are not bad for white at all. And the black bishop pair, also has to be admitted, is not exactly crushing yet, while white has very decent squares for all his pieces. So I still think this line can't be too scary. There's also this line. But I have had to give in to practice and to my computer yelling at me, saying, don't take that bishop, play c7, c6 instead. They yell at me, I listen. c6 is arguably the better move in this position. The bishop has to go somewhere, obviously. a4 remains a bad square, as we've seen in the last chapter. Bishop c5 transposes. So it should choose between c4 and d3. Let's start with the weirder looking bishop to d3. Black has a bit of a choice, but I like the very simple, yet funny looking takes followed by bishop d6. Sort of symmetrical. We use bishop d6 to cover the e5 pawn. The plan is to go short castles, and then bishop out of the way. Maybe bishop c7, maybe rook e8, bishop f8. And black does not have the slightest worry in this position. So instead of bishop d3, the most critical move, once again, is bishop to c4. Now we've included long castles, short castles in c6 into our lines. And here black has to make a decision. There are two lines that I like. One is knight f3, queen f3, and bishop c5. Bishop d6 is still possible, but feels a little more shady with this bishop on c4, where it's obviously better placed than on d3. So bishop c5. Now, if black is allowed to develop with d6, he should be fine. Critical line is queen to g3, short castles, queen takes e5, and pawn to d5. Very active play, sacrificing a bunch of pawns for the initiative. My computer says this equalizes, e takes d5, bishop to d6. And the question is, how well do you feel white is prepared here, or how well can white handle these complications? It looks like the best line is the move queen to d4. For example, queen to g5. Whatever. Run into bishop h2. King h2, knight g4. Dangerous. So the line seems to be something like queen to d4. Rook to e8. Once again, black is very serious threats here. Knight g4 is looming. White has to be extremely careful. The only move seems to be queen to h4. Then rook to e5, threatening rook to h5. And here I was looking at, bishop to e2, I believe, is the main move. And the drama continues, something like g5, queen d4, knight d5, knight d5, either cd5 or rook d5. My computer says equal, but I thought if white makes it all the way here, it might be his position that becomes somewhat easier to play. Still a pawn up, still not getting checkmated. I wasn't so sure. The computer still says no reason to worry here. g4 continues. But I wasn't so sure if I wanted this. Bishop d3 also possible. So I started looking for an alternative for these rainy days where you don't feel like sacrificing a lot of pieces, a lot of pawns in the opening. And I found one that's not exactly quiet either, but quite entertaining as well. It's the move d7, d6 here. Looks fairly quiet, but threatens bishop g4. So white will typically take a timeout and play h3. If he takes on d4 instead, it goes knight e2. We can just take here with an equal position. That's nothing to worry about. So the critical move seems to be h3. And here, the line that caught my attention to spice things up was takes, queen takes. Normally these positions are slightly better for white if white gets to play d3, bishop out, whatever, prepare f4, shuffle the knight around. Can be somewhat more pleasant. So I only want this position because of the next black move. Pawn to g5 attracted my attention. Trying to use the fact that white played h3. We just want to go g4 and start an attack. And it's not bad. The computer says this is equal. I looked at some lines like g4, d4, g4, hg, bishop g4, queen d3, rook to g8 with a complete mess. But it looks to me like black is doing fairly well. And I kind of like this idea to play the quiet looking g6, then boom, followed up with g5, creating fire on board. So I believe this is probably the most critical line of this chapter. After bishop c4, both knight f3, bishop c5 intending sacrifices, or d6 intending other violence, are quite appealing to me. Everything else makes less sense in comparison. Bishop e2, any move is good. d6 is fine. You can take here. You can probably play d5. No one's going to play bishop e2. It's too weird. And bishop d3. I believe this should be an excellent version of this pawn sacrifice as well, if we want to go for it. But bishop d3 is such a clumsy move that I don't really see it attracting a lot of followers either. This idea, which I showed you earlier, with castle c6 included, once again works fine. Bishop d3 is the best. Now you go castles. Play c6 at an opportune moment. There is not a problem. So to sum up, short castles is the most serious challenge theoretical in this chapter, but I like black's chances after c6. The most serious practical challenge could very well be knight d4, ed, e5, when I do believe that in this line after bishop c5, well, obviously black has zero problems, but I also do believe that there's enough scope to outplay somebody here. The thing you have to discuss with yourself is, am I willing today to play the position after queen e2, queen e6, or queen e7, or am I not? Objectively, there is not much to worry about in any of these lines. Knight d4 is just very sound, theoretically. So I can fully recommend it. I hope I've given you a bit of a warning about the potential practical pitfalls. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we will turn our attention to all the sidelines that exist in this position, g3, h3, a3, and whatever else there could possibly be. See you there to complete your 4 knights repertoire for white.